What if I told you that somewhere off the coast of the United States lies an island so terrifying that no one who steps onto it is ever seen again? Not one survivor, not one successful rescue mission, not one confirmed explanation. For more than a century, fishermen, sailors, government officials, and curious explorers have whispered about a place that should not exist. A place hidden by fog, protected by violent storms, and surrounded by stories so disturbing that most people dismiss them as myths. Yet buried inside forgotten newspapers, missing persons reports, Coast Guard records, and eyewitness testimonies is a mystery that refuses to die. Some believe the island is cursed. Others claim it is a portal to somewhere beyond our understanding. And a few insist that something lives there, something that does not want visitors to leave. This is the chilling story of the island that never lets you leave. The story begins in the early years of the 20th century along the rugged Atlantic coastline of the United States. In 1907, local fishermen from a small coastal town reported seeing a strange island appear through dense fog approximately 30 miles offshore. The island was unlike anything marked on nautical charts. It appeared suddenly. A dark mass of jagged cliffs rose from the ocean like a giant black fortress. The fishermen assumed it had simply been overlooked by cartographers. However, when they returned the following day, the island seemed different. Its shape appeared altered. Some swore it had moved. Others believed the fog was playing tricks on their eyes. Curiosity quickly spread throughout the town. Within weeks, a small group of 4 fishermen decided to visit the island. They stocked their boat with food and supplies and departed before sunrise. Residents watched them sail toward the distant silhouette, disappearing into the morning mist. They never returned. At first, everyone assumed a storm had sunk their vessel. Search teams spent days combing the surrounding waters. No wreckage was found. No bodies were recovered. No trace of the fishermen ever surfaced. The mystery might have ended there. The Atlantic Ocean is vast, and people disappear at sea more often than most realize. But 3 months later, something happened that transformed a tragic accident into a terrifying legend. Another fishing vessel discovered the missing boat drifting miles away from where it had last been seen. The vessel was intact. The sails were undamaged. Food supplies remained untouched. Personal belongings sat exactly where they had been left. Yet the crew had vanished completely. There was no sign of struggle, no blood, no indication of what had happened. It was as though 4 human beings had simply ceased to exist. Word spread rapidly. Newspapers published sensational headlines. The mysterious island became the subject of endless speculation. Some believed pirates had attacked the fishermen. Others suggested mutiny. But none of those theories explained why every possession remained on board, nor could they explain why no one was ever found. Years passed. The island faded into local folklore. Then, in 1919, a wealthy businessman named Henry Whitmore heard the story. Whitmore was fascinated by unexplained phenomena. He considered himself an amateur explorer and saw the island as an opportunity to uncover the truth. Ignoring warnings from local sailors, he assembled an expedition of 7 men. They carried cameras, scientific instruments, and enough provisions for several weeks. The expedition departed on June 14th. For the first 2 days, everything seemed normal. Using a newly installed wireless radio, Whitmore transmitted regular updates back to the mainland. His messages described towering cliffs, unusual rock formations, and dense forests unlike anything he had ever seen. Then the transmissions changed. The final messages became increasingly strange. Whitmore reported hearing voices in the forest, despite being unable to locate their source. Several members of the expedition claimed they could hear loved ones calling their names. Others reported seeing figures moving among the trees. One message described lights floating through the darkness after sunset. The final transmission arrived shortly after midnight. The operator recorded Whitmore shouting into the radio. His voice sounded terrified. According to official records, his last words were, "We are not alone on this island. Something is watching us from the trees." Then, silence. Repeated attempts to contact the expedition failed. Weeks later, a rescue team landed on the island. What they found shocked everyone. The camp remained standing. Tents were intact. Equipment was scattered around the site. Food still sat on tables. Several notebooks were discovered containing increasingly frantic journal entries. One explorer wrote that he felt constantly watched. Another described hearing footsteps outside his tent every night. A third claimed the forest seemed to change location while they slept. Yet once again, not a single member of the expedition was found. 7 men had vanished without any explanation. Government officials quietly closed the investigation. The island was labeled dangerous and largely forgotten. But the disappearances continued. Throughout the 1930s and 1940s, multiple vessels reported strange experiences near the island. Compasses malfunctioned. Radios emitted bizarre static. Dense fog appeared suddenly, even on clear days. Some sailors reported hearing screams echoing across the water. Others claimed to see human figures standing motionless atop the cliffs. The most disturbing incident occurred in 1947. A Coast Guard patrol responding to a distress signal approached the island during a severe storm. The signal originated from a cargo ship that had disappeared 2 days earlier. When rescuers arrived, they discovered the vessel anchored near shore. Every crew member was missing. The ship appeared abandoned, yet meals sat unfinished in the dining area. Coffee remained warm. Engine systems continued operating. It seemed impossible. An entire crew had vanished within moments. The official report offered no explanation. As decades passed, stories surrounding the island grew increasingly bizarre. Some witnesses claimed the island was haunted by the spirits of those who disappeared there. Others believed an unknown civilization lived beneath the cliffs. A few theorized that secret military experiments were being conducted in the region, but no evidence supported any theory. Then came the event that made the mystery famous nationwide. In 1973, a university research team launched a comprehensive scientific investigation. Unlike previous explorers, these researchers brought advanced equipment. They intended to study magnetic fields, geological formations, and environmental conditions. The team consisted of 12 experienced scientists. Every precaution was taken. A support vessel remained offshore. Regular communication was scheduled every hour. For the first 24 hours, everything seemed normal. Researchers documented unusual magnetic anomalies. Certain instruments behaved unpredictably. Compasses occasionally spun without explanation. Still, nothing seemed supernatural. Then, communication began to deteriorate. Radio transmissions became distorted. Voices sounded delayed. Words echoed strangely. One scientist reported seeing lights moving beneath the ground. Another claimed he briefly saw a person standing among the trees before realizing no one was there. On the third night, the support vessel received a frantic message. Several researchers were screaming. The transmission lasted only seconds. The final words anyone heard were, "They are coming out of the forest." Then, silence. At dawn, the support vessel attempted to approach the island. What happened next remains one of the strangest events ever documented. According to surviving crew members, a dense wall of fog suddenly emerged from nowhere. Visibility dropped to nearly zero. Navigation systems failed. Compasses spun wildly. The captain ordered an immediate retreat. When conditions finally cleared several hours later, the island appeared deserted. A rescue operation eventually landed. Once again, tents remained standing. Scientific equipment was untouched. Personal belongings were scattered throughout the camp. Yet every member of the research team had disappeared. 12 people vanished without leaving a single clue. National media exploded with coverage. Television programs debated possible explanations. Paranormal investigators became obsessed with the mystery. Government agencies launched confidential inquiries, yet the truth remained elusive. Years later, leaked documents revealed something even more unsettling. Several government investigators reportedly experienced strange psychological effects while studying the island. Some complained of recurring nightmares. Others described hearing voices while reviewing evidence. One investigator resigned, claiming that photographs taken on the island contained figures that had not been present when the pictures were taken. The photographs were never publicly released. By the early 2000s, the island had become one of America's most enduring mysteries. Internet forums filled with theories.
Then, a discovery changed everything. Researchers uncovered journals from a sailor who claimed to have visited the island in the 19th century. The journals described ancient stone structures hidden within the forest. According to the writings, local indigenous legends warned that the island was a place where the boundary between worlds became thin. The sailor recorded stories about travelers hearing voices from another reality. Those who followed the voices were never seen again. Most historians dismissed the journals as fiction, yet many details matched modern reports. The voices, the lights, the disappearances, the feeling of being watched. Suddenly, events separated by more than 100 years appeared connected. Then came the final expedition. In 2021, 5 experienced explorers launched a privately funded mission. Unlike previous teams, they documented every step using modern cameras, drones, satellite communication, and GPS tracking. Millions followed their progress online. For 2 days, everything seemed ordinary. Video footage showed dense forests and towering cliffs. The explorers joked about the island's reputation. Then, unusual events began. Electronic equipment malfunctioned repeatedly. Drone footage captured strange flashes of light deep within the forest. Several team members reported hearing voices despite being completely alone. Viewers watching live streams noticed unexplained sounds in background audio recordings. On the 3rd night, one explorer claimed he could hear his deceased father calling from the woods. Another reported seeing moving figures outside camp. The team debated leaving. Before they could decide, the live stream suddenly ended. Satellite communication failed. GPS tracking stopped. Every electronic device went offline simultaneously. Authorities launched a search operation. Days later, helicopters reached the island. What they found echoed every previous disappearance. The campsite remained intact. Food sat on portable tables. Sleeping bags lay untouched. Cameras continued recording until batteries died. Yet the explorers themselves were gone. No footprints led away from camp. No bodies were discovered. No evidence explained their fate. 5 more names joined the growing list of the missing. Today, the island remains officially restricted. Ships are advised to avoid the area. Most maps do not identify it by name. Government agencies rarely discuss the case, and despite more than a century of investigations, nobody knows what truly happens there. Was it a series of tragic accidents? A natural phenomenon beyond current scientific understanding? A psychological effect causing people to wander into danger? Or does something far more disturbing hide within those forests? The truth is that every theory raises more questions than answers. Why are campsites always left intact? Why do so many witnesses report hearing voices? Why do electronic devices fail? And most importantly, what happened to the dozens of people who disappeared without a trace? Perhaps one day technology will reveal the answer. Perhaps future explorers will finally solve the mystery. Or perhaps some places are never meant to be understood. Because if the stories are true, if even a fraction of the eyewitness accounts are accurate, then somewhere beyond the fog-covered waters of the Atlantic Ocean stands an island waiting patiently for its next visitor. An island where people arrive, but never leave. And maybe, just maybe, the greatest mystery is not what happened to those who disappeared. The greatest mystery is whether they ever truly left the island at all. But the story does not end there. Because after the disappearance of the 5 explorers in 2021, something surfaced that many investigators believe is the most disturbing piece of evidence ever connected to the island. The discovery was made almost by accident. When authorities recovered the explorers' equipment, hundreds of hours of video footage were extracted from damaged cameras and storage devices. Most of the recordings showed ordinary expedition activity: setting up camp, preparing meals, surveying cliffs, flying drones. Nothing unusual, nothing supernatural. Then technicians found a corrupted video file recorded approximately 3 hours before all communication was lost. The footage was heavily damaged. Large sections were distorted by digital interference. Audio crackled constantly. Yet what remained was enough to terrify everyone who viewed it. The camera appeared to be mounted on a tripod facing the expedition campsite. It was nighttime. The explorers sat around a small fire discussing whether they should leave the following morning. The atmosphere seemed tense. Several members admitted they had not slept properly since arriving. One explorer repeatedly glanced toward the tree line. Another claimed he could hear someone walking nearby. At first, viewers noticed nothing unusual. Then, one investigator paused the recording. Near the edge of the forest stood a dark silhouette. It was almost impossible to see. The figure appeared partially concealed behind a tree. No one around the camp seemed to be of its presence. The footage continued. Several minutes passed. The figure remained motionless. Then, frame by frame, analysts noticed something impossible. The silhouette appeared closer. No movement was visible, no walking, no running. Yet somehow it was now standing several feet nearer to the campsite. The process repeated again and again throughout the recording. Each time the camera briefly glitched, the figure appeared closer. Eventually, it stood just beyond the firelight. Then the video abruptly ended. Officials refused to release the footage publicly. However, leaked descriptions spread across the internet. Some dismissed the story as exaggeration. Others believed the recording provided proof that something inhabited the island. But the mystery deepened further. Several months later, technicians successfully recovered audio from another damaged device. The recording lasted only 47 seconds. At first, listeners heard ordinary forest sounds: wind, leaves moving, distant waves crashing against cliffs. Then came the voices. Not one voice, many voices. Men, women, children, all speaking simultaneously. The words were difficult to understand. Audio specialists amplified the recording repeatedly. What emerged shocked everyone who viewed it. The voices appeared to be calling individual explorers by name. Each voice sounded familiar to the person being addressed: parents, siblings, friends, loved ones, people the explorers personally knew, some of whom had been dead for years.
One investigator who reviewed the recording later stated that it felt less like listening to a conversation and more like hearing something trying to lure people somewhere. The source of the voices was never identified. The audio remains one of the most controversial pieces of evidence associated with the island. Then, investigators made another discovery, this one hidden inside decades of missing person reports. When researchers compared the names of those who disappeared on the island, they noticed an unusual pattern. Many victims had reported similar experiences before vanishing. They described vivid dreams, recurring nightmares, the sensation of being watched, and most strangely, they often claimed to see the same location, a valley hidden deep within the island's interior. According to journal entries spanning more than 100 years, multiple explorers described arriving at a clearing surrounded by enormous black stones. None of these individuals had ever met. Many lived decades apart, yet their descriptions were nearly identical. The valley supposedly contained a circular formation of ancient monoliths, unlike anything found elsewhere in North America. Several witnesses claimed the stones emitted a faint humming sound. Others reported strange symbols carved into their surfaces. One researcher from the 1973 expedition wrote that standing near the stones produced intense feelings of disorientation. His final journal entry included a chilling statement. "Sometimes I think the island is not trapping people. I think it is calling them." That sentence became one of the most discussed lines in the entire mystery. What did he mean? Was the island somehow influencing human behavior? Could environmental conditions explain the strange experiences? Some scientists believe so. Over the years, numerous theories emerged attempting to explain the phenomena. One popular hypothesis involves infrasound. Infrasound refers to extremely low-frequency vibrations that humans cannot consciously hear. Research has shown that exposure to powerful infrasound can cause anxiety, fear, nausea, hallucinations, and feelings of dread. If unique geological conditions existed beneath the island, they might generate such frequencies naturally. This could explain reports of fear and paranoia. It might even account for sightings of shadows and figures. However, the theory fails to explain the disappearances. Hallucinations alone cannot make entire groups vanish without leaving evidence behind. Another explanation focuses on magnetic anomalies. The island has long been associated with compass malfunctions and electronic interference. Some scientists speculate that unusually strong magnetic fields may affect human perception and navigation. Individuals could become disoriented and wander into dangerous terrain. Yet this theory also encounters serious problems. Despite extensive searches, no remains have ever been discovered. No bones, no clothing, no equipment carried away from campsites. Nothing. If people simply became lost, at least some evidence should eventually have been found. Then there are the more controversial theories. Some paranormal researchers believe the island represents a location where reality behaves differently. They point to recurring reports of missing time. Several witnesses who briefly visited the island before leaving safely described losing hours they could not account for. One sailor claimed he spent only 20 minutes on shore. When he returned to his vessel, nearly 6 hours had passed. His crew insisted he had been gone all afternoon. The sailor never returned to the island. Others describe hearing conversations that never occurred, seeing people who were not present, or experiencing memories that seemed completely real despite never happening. These stories have led some to suggest that the island may somehow affect perception of time itself. Mainstream scientists reject such ideas, yet they struggle to explain why so many accounts share similar details. The voices, the shadows, the missing time, the valley of black stones. Again and again, the same elements appear, as if all witnesses are describing different parts of the same puzzle. Perhaps the most frightening testimony came from a man named Robert Hayes. Unlike most visitors, Hayes actually survived, at least officially. In 1986, Hayes and two friends approached the island during a recreational boating trip. A sudden storm forced them ashore. According to Hayes, they spent only one night on the island before escaping at sunrise. His two companions disappeared shortly after entering the forest. Hayes shouted their names repeatedly. No response ever came. Then he heard a voice, his mother's voice, calling from deeper within the woods. The problem was that his mother had died 7 years earlier. Hayes followed the sound despite knowing it was impossible. The voice led him to a clearing filled with massive stone pillars. As he approached, he noticed figures standing among them, dozens of people, men and women staring silently towards him. At first, he thought they were survivors stranded on the island. Then he realized something horrifying. None of them moved. None of them blinked. They simply stood motionless, watching. Hayes fled immediately. He later described feeling as though the entire forest had become aware of his presence. Branches cracked behind him. Footsteps echoed from every direction. The voice continued calling his name. He reached the shoreline just before dawn and escaped using a small emergency raft. Authorities questioned him extensively. Many believed trauma had affected his memory. Yet Hayes never changed his story. Until his death decades later, he insisted that something lived on the island, something intelligent, something ancient. And according to Hayes, the island did not merely trap people, it collected them. His testimony remains one of the most controversial accounts ever recorded. Whether true or false, it contributed significantly to the island's terrifying reputation. Today, satellite imagery occasionally captures the island through breaks in cloud cover. Researchers continue examining photographs and historical records. Expeditions are proposed every few years. Most never receive approval. The risks are considered too great, and perhaps that is wise, because after more than a century of disappearances, one fact remains undeniable. Every major attempt to uncover the truth has ended the same way. People arrive, questions multiply, then someone vanishes. No explanation, no evidence, no answers, only silence. And somewhere beyond the fog, beyond the crashing waves and towering cliffs, the island continues to wait, unchanged, unexplained, watching, as if it knows that human curiosity is impossible to resist, as if it understands that sooner or later, someone else will come searching for the truth. And when they do, the island may finally reveal its secret or claim yet another victim. The most terrifying possibility is that the mystery has already been solved by those who disappeared. But whatever they discovered, they never came back to tell the world.